Bon après-midi à tout le monde et bienvenue à cette audience du comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa pour le groupe 1 secteur urbain. Welcome everyone to this Committee of Adjustment hearing for Panel 1 Urban Area. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances and consent applications to sever land, among some other types of applications. Our hearings are back to being in person. However, the committee can enable remote participation by video conferencing when requested by registered speakers. So we are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public on the committee's website. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing the hearing today, but I am with my fellow panel members. With me today are Member Blatherwick, Member Lecuyer, Member Coakley, and Member Keklikan. So in terms of the procedures, the hearings essentially unfold as follows. So you saw an agenda. Those are the order of the applications that essentially come in. What we do, though, is we triage some of that so we know which ones we're going to deal with more in a fast track manner, and others where we may ask for a presentation, and others where we may just ask questions, but they're not necessarily fast tracked. So we will be sort of mixing things up a little bit today. So note that the panel members have reviewed all of the materials that are related to the applications before us, including any planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition. So today we're here to hear some oral submissions relating to each of the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also are required to confirm in writing that they did so. And if not, we need to either swear or affirm an oath that the sign posting has been fulfilled in keeping with the regulations. So otherwise, if we can't get to either one of those, we need to postpone the hearing on the application. So as I said, so the panel may ask for a brief presentation, or the panel may go directly to questions for you. Or they may be unopposed. And so we have a couple of those today. When we hear from members of the public, we start with those on the speakers list, and then we make a call out to anyone else who may have an interest in the application. If you're not on my speakers list, I will ask you to provide your name. I may ask you to, in fact, spell out your last name for the record, and I will also need your municipal address. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes, and any exceptions are at my discretion. So at the end of the hearing on an application, the panel has a number of options in order to deal with the applications. So we can either make an oral decision, or we can reserve, or we can, of course, deny. So in the latter case, or I should say in the case of reservations, the committee decision will not be delivered during the course of the hearing, but that doesn't mean that we don't make a decision today. It just means that what we want to do often is deliberate on some of the more complex points that have been raised either in writing or orally, and then we make a decision before we leave the hearing room. So in all cases and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send an official written decision and the reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone who has expressed or requested a copy of the decision. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you need it translated in French, let me know. That's perfectly fine. So, and I'm not seeing any. So with that, then we'll go to sort of our business end before we get into the applications. We have a number of minutes that we need to essentially need to confirm. So starting with October 4th, panel members, any issues? Can I consider it the October 4th minutes confirmed? All right, for the record, the minutes of October 4th are confirmed. October 18th, any questions? Nope. All right, so then for the record, the minutes of October 18th are confirmed. November 1st. No, everyone's good. So for the record, the November 1st minutes are confirmed. November 15th, everybody was here? We're good? Okay. With that, then the minutes of October 15th are also confirmed. All right. So moving on to the declarations of conflict of interest. Is there any panel member who has a conflict of interest that they need to declare either for any of the agenda items that we have or any of the other two groups? No? All right, so with that, then I think we're going to go directly to adjournment requests. We have two. The first one is for application number 4 for 927 Wellington. And I believe the agent is Mr. Thompson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Thompson, you are aware of the adjournment request.
Yes.
Can you just briefly summarize why we're adjourning?
Fairly simple. The consulting team that we have, most of the members couldn't be here this morning, this afternoon, as well as the landowner is out of the country and would like to at least hear the hearing as it goes on. So we're asking that the adjournment be this matter be put off to the January hearing. And I'll also note we also informed the community association as well, so they're aware of our adjournment request.
All right, thank you. So the hearing date that I have then is January 17th, and I'm just going to look to our Deputy Secretary Treasurer. I just want to make sure there's enough space on that agenda in order to accommodate this.
Thank you. There is space on the January 17th agenda, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So with that, any questions about this adjournment from the panel members? No? Is there anyone in the audience, either in person or online, who'd like to speak to this adjournment to January 17th? Not seeing anybody. So with that, all those in favor of adjournment. All right, so for the record, we'll see you on January 17th. All right, happy holidays. Okay, so that brings us to the next adjournment request, which is number 11, which 290 Homewood. I'm looking for Ms. Jennifer Adams. We have Ms. Adams? Sorry, yes, Ms. Adams. All right.
I believe she's connected online, Madam Chair.
Hi, sorry about that.
That's fine. So Ms. Adams, you're aware of the adjournment request?
Yes.
All right. And can you just summarize briefly the reasons?
The primary reason would be a request from the planning department based on some unresolved issues that we're currently dealing with in regards to existing trees on site. One of them being a boundary tree between our property and the neighbor.
All right. And so I think we're looking at a sine die adjournment for this?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Are there any questions for Ms. Adams on the sine die adjournment? No? All right. Is there anyone either in person or online who would like to speak to the adjournment sine die on this application? All right. I'm not seeing anybody. So over to the panel. All those in favor? An adjournment. Okay. So for the record, the application is adjourned unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Adams, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now. Okay. So that takes us to what I would consider to be, based on my list, an unopposed list. So we're going to start with number 1, which is for 304A and 304B, Iona. Looking for Ms. Daou.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Good afternoon, Ms. Daou. So we don't have any questions for you on this. Very straightforward. We understand the application. So I just want to give you an opportunity to say, is there anything else we need to know before we move to a decision?
No, Madam Chair, there's nothing else that I'd like to share. We're fine with the conditions as presented, and that's all. It's fairly straightforward.
All right, excellent. So I'm just going to make a call out. Is there anyone in the audience? I don't have any speakers, excuse me, for this one. Anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to this application? Okay, not seeing anyone, so members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Ms. Dawu.
Thanks very much.
All right, the next one I'd like to deal with is number 2, which is 368 Tweedsmuir. And I believe I'm looking for Mr. Semeniuk. Ah, good afternoon.
Had a senior moment there that I was at the wrong application. Right.
I had a senior moment too, Mr. Hume, because it just happens that I was looking at number 3 and not number 2. So, okay. So with that, then we don't have any questions for you. We've looked at the application, relatively straightforward. Just let me have a quick look, though. I want to make sure that we have there's just one little thing that I think we need to just confirm with you. No, we don't need to. Well, I think you're gonna confirm it. So for the record, we are just amending the notice to read Wednesday, December 13th and not 15th. So unless anybody's opposed, I think we can make that change. And that's it for that application. So is there anything we need to know further, Mr. Hume, on this application?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. With that, then I don't have anybody on my speakers list. Is there anyone in the audience, either in person or online, who would like to speak to this application, either for or against? Not seeing anybody come forward. So panel members, then over to us. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Mr. Blatherwick, you go ahead.
Mr. Hume, where are you in the site plan process right now?
We've completed the site plan process. All the documents have been executed and the site plan agreement has been registered on title.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Good. Sorry about that. Yeah, so with that, then I think we can go to a vote. So panel members, all those in favor? Okay, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next one is 209 Montfort, and I'm looking for Mr. Robinson. Mr. Robinson. Is he online? Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Robinson. We don't need a presentation from you. I think we can deal with this fairly quickly. Just want to give you a chance to add any final comments or new information if you think we need it at this point.
No, I don't believe so. And we're in agreement with the conditions that are listed in the planning department staff report.
Perfect, thank you. With that, then, is there anyone in the audience, either either in person or online, who would like to speak to this application, either for or against? All right, I'm not seeing anyone. With that, then we can go on to a vote. Members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is 102 Lower Charlotte, looking for Mr. Chan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. All right, so again, we can deal with this application fairly quickly. Is there anything you would like to add? Any new information? Anything that the panel should know about?
Not at the moment.
All right. With that, then we'll go straight to seeing whether or not anyone from the public, either in person or online, would have any like to address the panel on this application, either for or against. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So members of the panel, then, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Mr. Chan.
Thank you.
All right. Looking next for 79 Lyndale, Mr. McGilligut online. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. All right, so just let me catch up here. We're going pretty quickly, so I just want to make sure I've got everything I need in this case. Just give me a moment. All right. So again, no presentation required. We've looked through the application. Anything additional that we need to know, Mr. McGilligut?
No, nothing else other than what's before you. Pretty straightforward application. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience, in person or online, would like to speak to this application either for or against? Not seeing anyone. Over to us for a vote. Members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you too. Last but not least, we're going to go to item number 12, 41E and 41F Stirling, looking for Mr. Gates.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gates. So just bear with me. I think there's something I do need to do here. Just need to confirm that we are, and I think in this case, I may refer to Ms. Linker. So for minor variance E, is your recommendation that we delete that minor variance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Variance E in staff's opinion is not required as we believe that it complies with the zoning bylaw. If the applicant wishes, they can request to remove that variance as we don't believe it'll be necessary for a building permit.
All right, over to you, Mr. Gates. Are we deleting or retaining?
We can delete.
All right, so for the record, we are deleting minor variance E and it remains A, B, C, and D, of course. Okay, any new information for us?
No.
Okay, with that, let me just check my speakers list. I don't think there's anybody on this. Okay, nope, I don't have anybody. So is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak either in person or online, would like to speak for or against this application? Not seeing anybody come forward. So over to us, panel, all those in favor? Okay, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you, Mr. Gates.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I think we'll proceed in the order of the applications remaining. So with that, back to number 3 for 82 3rd Street. Now I'm looking for Mr. Semyanek. Good afternoon. All right, so I don't think we need a presentation, but I do want to open it up to questions from the panel members at this point. Yes, Ms. Member Likigi.
Could you confirm, so I know that the notice says that it's to convert an existing non-compliant into a coach house, and I recall one of the neighbors was concerns about the height, but just for clarity, nothing is being raised, it's just modifications inside the dwelling. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from panel members? Okay, I have a few then. Over to you, Ms. Linker, I think. So the only thing that really concerns me a little bit about the application coming forward to us at this time is that we don't really know you know, whether or not this is going to pass the Ontario Building Code test, you know, so we're saying, you know, as far as, so we're considering a brand new use for a structure, an existing structure, without knowing whether or not it's going to conform, it's going to comply with the building code. So can you tell us whether you had a chance to talk to Building Code Services about this? You know, what are we looking at here? Do we have any better assurance that in fact it will meet the code requirements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding for a coach house that does not have any windows facing lot lines, that in the zoning bylaw, we don't necessarily have minimum setback requirements, and that this is instead provided under the Ontario Building Code. So I did not receive an answer from Building Code Services staff regarding this. However, if it is not compliant at building permits, then it will receive those deficiencies, and they'll either need to move the coach house away from those lot lines, or they will just remain as a garage.
I think sometimes this homework needs to be done before we actually have an application before us and we're being asked to approve it. So we're being asked to, you know, we have a council approved zoning bylaw, which is an expression of their intent. And we're being asked to provide relief from that. And so to do that, to me, it seemed it would make sense to have all the information we need just to ensure that that decision makes sense in the context. And you raised something, which I'm going to go back to our speaker about. So I looked at the elevations on this, and I'm wondering whether or not, in fact, having no windows for a residential unit is in compliance with the building code. So can you tell me what research you've done to ensure that in fact you can convert this to a coach house without adding any windows? Sorry, I don't know that you're okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So what we did do is we did submit it for an application for a permit, and we do have the information back on what's required. So we did that sort of in tangent, because we know that if this gets approved and the owner wants to move forward, that we then can respond very quickly to the permit application. So we do have feedback for the submission, and I can send that into the committee for what we have received. The questions were all dealing with the stair. There weren't issues with fenestration.
Nothing under the building code that they flagged that would be required in terms of adding windows?
No.
Because it's going to be very dark in that garage without any windows.
They have the front window because of the windows along the front, which would be the main living, and then they have skylights in the second floor. So you will have light. You'll have light. It's the condition of the building. The skylights put in for second floor lighting, and then the main floor has windows that face the back of the original house inward.
All right, what I'm trying to avoid, of course, is that we would be looking at dealing with this application piecemeal. So the idea is if you go through the process and all of a sudden we find out that, oh no, there's another minor variance or there's this or that, we would prefer to have all the information at the time that we're dealing with an application rather than, you know, seeing you 2 more times in the new year.
No, I understand. We have done this simultaneously. We have submitted for building application while we're in for variance. We know it's a risk that we may have an issue, but sometimes it expedites the process for the build, because once you grant the variance, they can move very quickly as opposed to waylaying another 2 months to get a building application out. So we understand the risks if the building can be achieved to meet the building code standards. What we're asking for is if we do during this process, if the relief for the height is okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I still think that it's a little backwards. I think it would be good to have the information before we grant relief from a council approved standard.
But a lot of times we don't have all our building information correct to go to because clients don't want to spend all that money to have a complete set of drawings done before even knowing whether they're going to get the relief for a variance. So we try to balance this in terms of cost to the client and expectations. So if expectations come back, we can't have this for some reason, they know, but they don't have to get that approved. It's a long process sometimes getting through the permit, not to be disrespectful. It's just the way it is out there right now.
But you do realize that it's completely tied to plans and to the information provided. So any change to that and you're back to us for brand new.
We understand.
All right, okay. Any other questions? Yes, Member Blatherwick.
Mr. Semina, could you be opposed to having us impose a condition that says that we're granting this variance for the life of the building?
Meaning?
For the life of the building until such time as it comes down, if that variance is in place. And
Sure. That's not, I don't see that being an issue now.
Okay.
All right, so that would mean then, Member Blatherwick, that we would. We're adding a condition. I guess just as a provision, I'm just looking to our Deputy Secretary Treasurer here. So we do this, and it becomes, like, how does that get? All right. It's a standard condition already?
That's
Okay.
correct. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
perfect. Thank you. It's covered. Great. Okay. With that then, let's see, back to my speakers list. All right, no one's on here for, to speak to the application. Is there anyone in the audience, either online or in person, who'd like to speak to this? There's only a couple of people left. And I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So I think we can then, sorry. Yes, Ms. Linker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just did a double check on my email. While I didn't hear back from Building Code Services regarding my specific question, they did provide general comments on all of the applications. And for the subject application, they did note that they had no comments. So while this is a very high level review from Building Code Services, they did not note any red flags with respect to this application.
All right, thank you. That is helpful. It gives us a little bit of comfort. So that's good. Okay. So I think I did the call out. Didn't see anybody come forward. So I think we're at the voting stage. All right, members of the committee, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye now.
Happy holidays.
You too. Happy holiday. Okay. I think that takes us to number 505 Dawson, Mr. Segreto. I see Mr. Segreto is already with us. All right, so Mr. Segreto, we're not asking for a presentation. I am going to open this up directly to questions from the panel members. Anyone? And while they were thinking, maybe I can just get a housekeeping amendment with you. On the notice, there was an error that was spotted. The zoning reference says RG2, and we're going to change that to R2G.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so we're confirming that for the record.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's the only one. Questions? Yes, Member Keklikan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question of, I guess it's a point of clarification for Ms. Linker. In the staff report, there's a statement about the realizing or recognizing that 3 of the properties within the SCA study boundary contains rear-facing garages. I'm just curious to know what kind of analysis was done. What was the scope of the analysis? Was it a typical streetscape character analysis or observation? Or if you could just clarify that, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Madam Chair, the scope of analysis was done around the 21 surrounding lots of the property, and the staff were noting in the comments that we made to the Committee of Adjustments that 3 of the lots were considered to have no front-facing attached garage, but staff do recognize that the garage was instead located off of Kirkwood Avenue rather than Dawson, so it was not impacting the Dawson streetscape, and that was kind of related to our discomfort with allowing front-facing attached garages on Kirkwood, where they would be permitted as of right, rather than off of Dawson, where they need to get a variance for.
Right. So it's basically an anomaly that you were pointing out. Is that the? Like that it's not a front facing, but it's rear.
That's correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Coakley.
So I think as people may know, I've struggled and still struggle with streetscape analysis. And I'm not sure whether this question is directed to the applicant or to planning staff. As I look at the plans, and I'm not an architect, I'm not a planner or anything else like that, but assuming we do collectively want to protect what appear to be the two major trees on this particular property, is my interpretation fair that it would not be possible to put driveways on Iona and it would not be possible to put driveways on Kirkwood without digging up one of those two trees? Is that a kind of a fair understanding on my part?
Thank you for your question. For the majority of that question, I'll direct that to Ms. Young, the forester, but we, as the department, would discourage new driveways off of Kirkwood Avenue, as that's a major corridor and we'd like to locate those on a local street. But I'll defer the rest of the question to Ms. Young.
Hi there. Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair, it does seem that there would be room to place a driveway off of Iona, which could potentially help to retain tree number 1, which is on the Dawson frontage. But it is recognized that that tree is starting to decline. So if they were to redesign the property, the tree may decline further anyway. So the option is there. I don't know if the applicant has looked at that option.
Sorry, could I just clarify?
Yes.
I guess what I was trying to get at is that it's a semi-detached, so the idea is, I mean, the request is for 2 driveways. I admit I could see maybe one could be built on Iona and protect and keep the tree. I couldn't see place to put 2. Is that that's kind of what I was trying to get at? That if the tree remains, it would be virtually impossible to put well, in my view, impossible to put 2 driveways on Iona. And I kind of, does everybody agree with me, or am I missing something there?
Yes, I do believe that to be true. I mean, without seeing plans, it looks like it would be quite difficult to fit 2 driveways off of Iona while retaining the tree.
Okay, so then if that were to happen, and I'm looking at Ms. Linker now, would that then eliminate the need for one of the variances?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A minor variance would still be required to allow for one of the front-facing attached garages to be on Dawson. If both principal entrances remain facing Dawson, there would be no requirement for minor variance for the front-facing attached garage onto Iona, which would then become a side-facing attached garage.
And in your opinion, would you say that in fact would bring the design for this property actually more in line with the existing streetscape character?
Thank you for the question. I believe it would bring it more in line with the character of Dawson by allowing for 1 garage rather than 2 garages and 1 private approach off of that street rather than 2. I'm not sure how it impacts Kirkwood, but we would not, or sorry, not Kirkwood, Iona, but I'm not sure. I don't think that we could comment on that if they're not asking for a minor variance from that.
All right, thank you. Member Coakley.
Apologies, but based on what you just said, Ms. Linker, if and I'm not suggesting the building should be redesigned, but I'm just, again, trying to wrap my mind around some of this. If the building were designed in a way that one of the principal entrances was on Iona, then what you're saying is that would allow for a driveway on Dawson for that unit without, like, as of right?
Thank you for the question. So the semi-detached dwelling has 2 principal entrances, and the streetscape character analysis analyzes the street that the principal entrances front onto. So if garages and driveways front onto a street that is different than the principal entrance, they would not be subject to the streetscape character analysis. So if both principal entrances fronted onto Dawson, they can develop the other streets as they wish. If one principal entrance faced onto Dawson and one principal entrance faced onto Iona, they would need a streetscape character analysis for both of those streets, and both of those would be subject to the review of seeing if driveways and front-facing attached garages would be permitted, just because we are paying attention to how that impacts the view of the principal entrance.
I think I'm getting more confused as we go, so I just, bear with us, Mr. Segreto, because I am going to get to you in terms of questions at some point, but I just want to make sure I understand. So in this, I thought we were talking about keeping the principal entrances both on Dawson with the option of allowing the driveway and the garage to front on Iona, and that would eliminate the need for one minor variance. And let me get to the second part of my question, because I think what I heard you say was, so a streetscape analysis was done for Dawson, but not for Iona. So can you tell us though what your opinion would be with regards to what the requirements for Iona would be if a streetscape analysis was done?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'd need to see plans to see if that would trigger any other variances required with these plans. If the applicant would like to demonstrate that design, they're more than welcome to, but staff reviewed what was submitted.
All right, fair enough. Member Lecuyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your a planning report, it said that you guys discussed alternative approaches. I just wanted to clarify what those were, and that was kind of how what landed on this design. And then I guess the second part, and maybe related, is the comment regarding the evolving neighborhood overlay and the need to look at more more urban rather than suburban. But I'm just curious, given that the rest of the street seems to have a lot more properties that look like the one that's before us, kind of when did that come into play?
Thank you, thank you for the question through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, as soon as I was saying that, I forgot the question. So the alternative designs that we were looking at with the applicant were front-facing attached garages off of Kirkwood, and that would not trigger any minor variances if the principal entrance faced onto Dawson, and through city policies, that would be a design that we'd like to avoid. So the applicant decided to come to the Committee of Adjustment and request minor variances to allow for the garages to be on Dawson with the principal entrances, which would require that minor variance. And sorry, the second part of the question was with the mature neighborhoods overlay, when did that come into effect? So that was with the new official plan that was adopted by council in 2021, and it was approved by the ministry in 2022. So it's relatively new to shift towards these more urban characteristics, which include detracting the eye from the storage of vehicles and ensuring that that's not the prominent feature on a front facade.
So just to clarify then, though, the ones that were already built on the street, they would have gotten a building permit, perhaps, again, not needing to confirm every property on that street, but in theory, they would have gotten approval under the old, and therefore, because this is new, that's why this is coming up for this property and not the other ones that recently have something that looks exactly like what's being proposed today.
Thank you for the question. So the streetscape character analysis associated with the zoning bylaw, it included the new element of regulating front-facing attached garages in the end of 2020. So any building permit application that came in prior to the end of 2020 did not have to focus on the character of front-facing attached garages. I did not do an analysis to see when those houses were built.
All right, thank you. Member Coakley.
Sorry to be putting you on the spot, Ms. Linker. And maybe this question should be better addressed to City Council than you, but if I'm understanding correctly, and maybe the math problem is I'm misunderstanding, the issue isn't driveways and garages. The issue is having a driveway and a garage on the same street. So if in this particular instance, and forget for the purpose of my question, let's forget whether a building could even be designed this way. But if there were two principal entrances on Kirkwood, then there could be two driveways on Iona or two driveways on Dawson. If the two entrances were on Iona, the driveways could be on Kirkwood or Dawson. If the two are, they can be on. So it's not the driveways that seems to be the problem for whoever drafted the bylaw. It's the combination of a driveway and an entrance. Is that a fair understanding?
Thank you for the question. That's my understanding that the purpose of the streetscape character analysis is to view what is on the same frontage as the principal entrance and to ensure that that principal entrance remains primary and isn't pushed to a secondary element in these mature neighborhoods. And I think that sometimes these corner through lots, which have multiple frontages, were not contemplated in this part of the zoning bylaw.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Mr. Segreta, over to you. Just want to talk to you a little bit about what kinds of different designs did you look for this property? And is there, based on the discussion that you've heard today, is there, what are your thoughts about moving perhaps closer to?
If we can go to the PowerPoint, if you don't mind, please.
Is there any particular slide on the presentation?
There are three examples that we've done. If you can kindly go to them. It's not that one there. There's three examples that I've shown. I've shown one on Kirkwood, one on Iona, and then one on Dawson. I don't know what page you're on. I think it's a little bit further down. There are three examples, three options explored for garages and driveways on our PowerPoint. There you go. So when you're looking at option number one, you can clearly see this is the most desirable one for my client. She would like to be in keeping with the rest of the characteristics of that particular neighborhood, as was explained 2 years or so ago, that garages were permitted on Dawson, and there's half a dozen semis that I've shown in my presentation or in my PowerPoint that I've sent out to the committee, to the community association, and to the abutting neighbors. So that is the one that will put the least damage to the trees and would be most in keeping with respect to what is there right now. We get caught with this due to the fact that when you calculate the streetscape analysis, you can clearly see that we take 5 houses to the north of us, 5 houses to the south of us. In this particular case, we're on a corner, so it skews the calculations. It really doesn't give us the proper calculations on it. And then there's, I believe, 10 houses across the street that we do. So when you're looking at option number one, you can clearly see that there are no trees that are being cut. The trees are being preserved. The trees are being protected. You can also see, due to the fact that we are on the corner of Iona and Kirkwood, that we are caught with 2 site triangles that we have to provide, and we're providing those site triangles as well. And if we were to do garages on that site with these site triangles, we would be driving over these garages on Iona. Not only that, it would trigger, if you look at option number 3, which is the one on Iona, it would trigger all sorts of other variances with front yard setback, rear yard setback, rear yard lot area, so on and so forth. So there would be a number of variances for option number 3 where you would be facing Iona. And then you have, option number 2, which is the one where you can see at the top right-hand corner where the driveway is. That's where the existing driveway exists for this single-family dwelling, which is not preferred by planning. So that really takes everything out of the equation. And not only that, if you were to do a driveway, it would be right in front of that tree on option number 2, and that tree would be history. Right now, that tree is being saved. In addition to the trees that are there, if you look at option number 1, you can clearly see that there's 2 new trees that are being planted there. It has been revised, and I don't know if the committee has that, but maybe Nancy can elaborate on that a little bit more. But what we're essentially doing on this property is we're providing 5 additional trees to the existing trees that are remaining. So we have 1 tree on Iona planted brand new on city property, and then there are 4 trees that are being planted on the Iona side. So in my opinion, I think The best scenario really is that we do the garages the way they are. We're protecting all the trees. It is not out of character with what is there presently right now. We get caught with this new bylaw that comes into effect with these front-facing garages. So we did do our research on it. We did do different plans. We did spend a lot of time with it. We did discuss it with the community association. We did discuss this stuff here with abutting neighbors. There was one neighbor, there was actually 2 letters on file, but one neighbor that actually sent in a letter, Mr. James. He was concerned about the tree right on the corner, the biggest tree that is there. That tree is not getting damaged. It's going to remain. And he's actually, in his letter, he says he's not against the front-facing garages, and he has he has no concerns about those garages facing the front on Dawson. So we did do a lot of research on this. We did do a lot of studies. If you look at the full presentation, you can see my presentation with garages, without garages, with all kinds of stuff happening on other projects where they throw their garbages in front, their bicycles in front, and then raccoons getting into these things. This is a mature neighborhood. This is a very nice neighborhood. And I believe this would be the best way, proposal for this development to move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Segreto, and I do appreciate the illustrations that you had in your presentation that you brought forward to us for discussion, because that does provide added clarity to how it would work. I just want to say, though, that what the committee, part of the discussion that we just had was not just a tree issue, it's also a neighborhood, streetscape, character, kind of in terms of trying to ensure that we're looking at sort of an optimal design to preserve what's already in the neighborhood. So that was the reason for our exploration into whether or not we should be, in fact, looking at something like moving one driveway perhaps to Iona. And, because we're trying to balance a number of objectives, having more or less minor variances is in my mind, it really comes down to, is it achieving the best result for the neighborhood? If it is, then whether it's 2 or it's 5, doesn't make all that much difference, I don't think. Just to ensure that we do in fact get the best results. So that was the point of that discussion, right? That's where we were going. Your illustrations, though, were very helpful. So we saw that, so realistically on option number 3 that you had, it looked like, I think it was 2 perhaps, that there would be a conflict with the tree. So that's fair enough. That's an objective that we can't meet. And if we looked at option number 3, which was the 2 driveways fronting onto Iona instead of onto Dawson, looks like we would have perhaps, and based on some of what we heard from Ms. Linker, a better compatibility in the neighborhood than if they both front on Dawson. That said, there's lots of examples, as you mentioned, on Dawson of front-facing garages. So is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Segreto?
Well, yes, I would. I'd like to reiterate that if they face onto Iona, again, I get caught with these corner site triangles, and that makes a big difference. It really hurts the design of this thing here, and it becomes a traffic issue. And I really stress the fact that the tree, if you look at option number 3, and if you were to put it up again, that tree on the bottom part, that would be a very difficult tree to preserve and to save. And you can clearly see that it's very close to the house, so on and so forth. Right now, we're saving that tree. That tree is being saved. As I said, all the trees are being saved, and we are adding 5 new trees on the site. And I really believe that it makes a much better fit for these garages to be on Dawson, and it really doesn't impact or cause any disadvantage or anything negative by having these garages on that side. Thank you so much.
Fair enough. I just want a clarification then from Ms. Young, and I'm going to ask the coordinator to leave this up if you could. Ms. Young, looking at option number 3, then can you just confirm what you think the impact would be on that on the trees that side?
Sorry, I was having trouble there. Thank you for the question. It certainly would be impacted with both the driveway and the front entrance. Yeah, I mean, we would obviously need more information to make a full assessment. The impacts would be more with that design than with the two driveways on Dawson. I don't know if there's an option to have one driveway on Iona and one on Dawson that would work to place driveways further away from both trees. That may have been looked at, but does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted your opinion on it, looking, having looked at the site and knowing, what you know about the trees, the condition of the trees. Okay, that wraps up my questions. Anybody else? Yeah, Member Blatherwick.
Mr. Segreto, I'm looking at your site plan, which is option 1 on that page. I'm looking at the 2 corner site triangles. I fully understand why the city would require the site triangle on Kirkwood Avenue and Iona because of the right of way width of Kirkwood and the fact that it may be widened in that segment of the street. However, was it ever explained to you why the site triangle at the corner of Dawson and Iona was necessary? Just curious.
Mr. Blatherwick, you're absolutely right. It was never explained to me, but my understanding is that there was another case on Dawson just a little bit further to the north of Dawson, and I forget the other street. And this gentleman actually got a building permit for this property. He ended up building a deck, and now there's a big issue with this deck. He has to cut this deck because that corner site triangle is encroaching onto the back of the deck that this gentleman built. And there seems to be all kinds of legal issues or things that are occurring there right now. But I know that he has the same issue as I do on the corner of Kirkwood, as I do on Kirkwood and Iona.
All right. Yes, I remember that application.
Yeah.
This panel dealt with it in their last term. I was
Okay.
just curious about the one on Dawson and Iona because, quite frankly, they'll never be widened to 4-lane streets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segreto.
Thank you.
All right, final questions. Yes, Member Dickey.
Through you, Madam Chair, just curious for Mr. Segreto on, we see a lot of different applications and sometimes these semi-detached will have secondary suites to provide additional units of housing to the community. I just noticed that there's no secondary suites here. It's just 2 semis. Was that?
The intention here is, yes, the intention here is that the owner, who is a doctor, is going to live in one of the units. And in the second unit, their intention is it's an investment property for them, which they are going to be renting. So they have no intentions of putting secondary units, as far as I know. There's no design for secondary units or anything either. They're just 2 semi-detached dwellings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I don't have anybody on my speakers list for this application. So just general call out, anybody in the audience or online that would like to speak to this application? Okay, not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then, Mr. Segreto, we're going to give you the last 2 minutes to summarize.
Well, basically what I have in front of you and what I've said, I believe it's a very good fit for this particular neighborhood. As we know, not Kirkwood, but Westboro has seen many infill projects over the years, over the last 15 years, and I've done so many of them in there myself. I believe it is a good fit. With respect to the minor variance, I truly believe that the minor variance with front-facing garages is minor in nature and that it impacts absolutely nothing. It's a good design. We've done this design many times and you'll see it throughout the whole neighborhood. Is it desirable? In my opinion, it is desirable. We are saving the trees. We're adding an additional 5 trees. The zoning bylaw permits this sort of thing in this particular neighborhood, semi-detaches under the R2 zone. And with respect to the official plan, the intensification for a underdeveloped lot, when you're looking at a single family dwelling, which sits on a lot which is approximately 72 feet wide by almost 100 feet deep or so, it is underdeveloped. You can see a 2-story semi-detached here, and it is good infill. and it is good development for this particular neighborhood. That's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Segredo. So I'm just looking for guidance here from the members reserving. Yes, I think we're going to reserve. Okay, so we're not making a decision right at the moment. Mr. Segredo, so thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye now. Okay, so that then brings us to, let's see, number 8 is next on our list. And that one is for 674 de l'Église. Mr. Robinson.
Good afternoon again.
Hello again. All right, so just want to make sure there isn't any housekeeping changes required, because there's a couple of things we caught after the fact. And I don't think so. I think we're good. Okay, so no presentation is required. I'm going to open it up directly to the members for questions. Yes, member Lecky.
Just a question regarding, I noticed that one of the neighbors was looking at a possibility of 3-bedroom to meet the needs of the community for more family built housing, and just curious if that was considered as part of the design.
Thank you for your question. If it was to be 3-bedroom units at the expense of the 1-bedroom units and keeping the same footprint of the building, and not triggering any more variances, the number of units for the building would probably go from 8 down to 6, and that's not really something that's in the sort of pro forma of the clients for this building. They're providing 1 studio, 2 2-bedrooms, and then 5 1-bedroom units. And when you go to 7 or more units, then there is a requirement for in the Ontario Building Code to provide barrier-free access, and that is what we have provided through the ramp and access throughout the key parts of the building for a person with disabilities. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, so it's just, I know when building these projects, it's trying to make the math work. And so just to clarify, my question is that the 3-bedroom was just not financially feasible in the grand scheme of the overall design and the financial viability of the project.
That is correct. Plus the fact that, as you can see from the plans filed, there is no on-site parking being provided, and it is more likely that a 3-bedroom unit would have a need for an on-site parking space rather than the mix that we're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I just have a quick question, and Mr. Robinson, and I'm hoping I'm not confusing this with an earlier application, but where did you need a site plan for this?
No.
You did not. Okay. All right. I think that's it then. I don't have any questions. Anybody else? Yes, member Blatherwick.
Ms. Linker, I asked you a question regarding this file. Okay. You're reducing the applicants applying to reduce the lot area to permit a reduced interior side yard setback and to permit the required minimum front soft landscaping area to be reduced. And I'm just wondering if you reviewed this application in light of the direction given to Committee of Adjustment in section 11.5 of the official plan. Section 9. Right, and then will it be criteria A, C, and D?
Thank you for your question. Yes, staff reviewed it under section 11.5 of the official plan and recognized that the applicant is still able to provide sufficient bicycle parking, waste management, and although the soft landscaping appears to be deficient through the variance, it is actually sufficient. It's just that the walkway is proposed abutting the front lot line, whereas it's not supposed to abut the front lot line. So they are providing the correct percentage of front yard soft landscaping in the front yard.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Linker. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the members on this? Okay. Ms. Linker, anything additional that we need to know about this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that it's all been covered. Thank you.
Right, I just wanted to make sure there's a lot in here. Okay. With that then, I guess we can go to, oh, just before I go there, Mr. Robinson, in terms of the conditions being, requested, recommended, any thoughts? Are we good with them all?
The only one I'd like to just confirm on is condition 10, joint use and maintenance agreement. It says on the top of the signature page, which is the final page, says joint use maintenance of common elements agreement shall set forth the joint use and maintenance of all common elements, including but not limited to common party walls, which there are none, common structural elements such as roof, footings, soffits, foundations, common areas, common driveways, and common landscaping. Since really the only common element of this project is down the center of the overall lot now where the lot line is, and it's a walkway and ramp going from front to back. So going from De La Glise to the front, the entrance along the midpoint of the sidewall, it's a ramp for barrier-free access. And then from there to the rear on Regis, it's a walkway and some steps. So I don't know if I'm just being over cautious on this, but there is no shared roof and there is no party wall. I don't know if you want to edit the condition or we just need to get it cleared.
So I think the wording that's in here is just very generic, right? So it
Yep.
says, but you know, including but not limited to. So it's meant to be a bit of a catch-all.
Okay.
So I would leave it because I don't think anybody's going to impose on you something that's not there to be imposed on, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay. So any other ones then, Mr. Robinson?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. With that then, I think based on my speakers list, just give me a moment. I don't think we have anybody on. Yeah. So nobody. So is there anyone in the audience, either in person or online, who would like to speak to this application, either for or against? Not seeing anybody. All right. So with that, then I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just summarize, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. As presented, it's a application to divide the lot into 2 parcels with an 8-unit low-rise apartment on each with no parking. It's a through lot, and the variances being sought are 2 of them are for existing conditions on lot width and lot area. There is a requested side yard setback on the side yards of the buildings that face one another, and it's primarily for the fact that with barrier-free access, there needs to be a wider internal area for movement for a person with a barrier-free situation. And the final variance being sought, as indicated by Ms. Linker, and we have discussed this, is because of the fact that this is a barrier-free building, we need to provide a barrier-free access from the front, the entrances to the garbage facility, which is on the sides of the building. So we need to have a walkway, and that goes across the area that is the soft landscaping, and we can only count a very small portion of the soft landscaping in the calculation. So the number does appear strong, but it really, we are providing in total the required amount, just maybe not in the right location. So it's been well-designed project, and we're looking forward to construction. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson. So I am going to, or I'm inclined to recommend to my panel members that we actually vote on both the consent application and on minor variance. Any area? Okay. So then moving forward then on the consent application, which includes easements over part 2 in favor of part 3 and 4 and easements over part 3 in favor of parts 1 and 2. All those in favor? Okay, so for the record, the consent application is unanimously granted. And then on the minor variances then, although there are several, as you say, I think we've seen a well developed site in keeping with all of the principles of functionality. Looking for a vote on this. All right, Member Keklikan. Are you dissenting? Oh, you're in favor, okay. Sorry, sometimes I don't quite catch it all. So, all right, so for the record, then the minor variance applications is also unanimously granted. So thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. All the best for the holidays. Bye-bye.
Likewise, bye now. Okay, that brings us to our last application, which is for 516 Tweedsmuir, looking for the agent, Ms. Hill.
Hello.
Good afternoon. All right, so I don't believe we wanted a presentation on this as well, so I'm going to open it up to questions from the committee. All right, let me catch up. Just want to make sure. Oh, yes, I do have a quick question for you and for Ms. Linker, I guess, just to confirm. So minor variance C and H can be deleted. Are we deleting those?
I believe so, yes.
All right, Ms. Linker, can you confirm that that is in keeping with your comments?
I'm sorry, I'm just looking up to see which ones those are.
Madam Chair, if there's any uncertainty, we'd be quite happy to keep them out of an abundance of caution.
Yeah, I agree. If we can put them aside though, all the better. So Ms. Linker, those would be the basement level entrances.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that through the recent zoning bylaw amendment, these are no longer required, but it is up to the applicant if they'd like to keep them in an abundance of caution.
So there was an amendment to the zoning recently approved by council. Is it through the appeal period?
Thank you for the question. It has, I think the appeal period ended at the beginning of November. So yes, it has passed the appeal period.
All right, so Ms. Hill, what would you like to do?
We might as, if it doesn't matter, we could just keep them.
All right, we'll keep them in. It's interesting because it would be nice to dispense with relief that we don't need when we get to this point. But all right, we'll go with the abundance of caution approach. Okay. Back to questions. Yes, Member Bladerick.
Ms. Hill, regarding the balconies at the rear of the dwelling.
Yes.
And as you know, we've dealt with balconies and overlooking issues before at this panel. Would you or would your client be agreeable to privacy screens on the I guess the northern and southern extents of both balconies? And I think in the past we've asked for 2.1 meters privacy screens, which would be the depth of the balcony, and also the balustrades being opaque to add to to reduce the amount of overlook and noise and onto neighboring properties.
Your concern is the second story balconies?
Both of them. They're both above grade.
Okay. The ones that are, we purposefully located them at the center of the lot so that they're quite a distance from the neighbors.
Yep.
Are you concerned, just so I understand properly, are you concerned about the privacy between the new residents or between the new residents and the neighbors?
On the north, incumbent residents to the north, to the south, and to the west.
Okay. I don't think that it would be in my client's best interest to agree to that. To the north, there's a garage, which if we could pop up the site plan, it would be helpful to see. Oh, it's not on that site plan.
These are fairly deep balconies, are they not, Ms. Hill?
No.
How deep are they?
I I don't think I have dimensions on here. I think they're 8 feet deep
That's a deep balcony.
and about 8 or 9 feet wide. However, that means that on a 25-foot wide lot, they're 15 feet away from the side yard, but from the side lot line, which is a significant difference. If you
It's also the visual, Miss Hill. Privacy isn't just about sound.
Yeah. If you proceed through the slide deck, perhaps there's one that does include the garage. There we go. So on the northern side, you can see that the neighbor's garage is completely blocking any views back towards the neighbor's house on the north side. So I don't think that there's any concerns in that direction. To the south, you'll see there's quite a large canopy tree. I just don't see that there are concerns. And I know that in the zoning bylaw, there is certainly a concern expressed specifically with respect to overlook from second floor balconies. But it was my, and maybe the city's planner can clarify, but we certainly would follow that regulation if it applies here. But otherwise, I'm just not sure that it's important or that it makes a difference.
My question is, why do you need an 8-foot deep balcony?
So 8 feet is ideal for sitting around a table. So because those upper units are 3-bedroom units, we wanted to make sure that the whole family could sit outside and have a meal.
And again, it comes back to my question about noise and privacy. Basically creating a party zone in the backyard above grade. Sound travels.
I guess I would say that I sort of humbly submit that our official plan is calling for intensification. And this is, I think, a great example of intensification. It's the same size building as a semi in Westboro. And yet instead of 2 families having homes, 6 families get to have homes and live in this great location in this neighborhood that's, you can walk to everything. And I think it's really reasonable for those people living on the top floors to have balconies that are located in a manner that they have the least impact on neighbors and maximize the functionality and the enjoyment for those new residents. Those new residents deserve high quality outdoor space.
Most of that should be at grade, Miss Hill. Thank you.
I'm just going to chime in. I mean, I have a 6-foot depth on my balcony and I have a table and it works. I guess to Member Blatherwick's point, I think a lesser depth would still allow for that family meal use. So anyway, I just share that because it does work in our house. So the one question that did come to mind though, while you were having discussions with Member Blatherwick, was about the consultation that you undertook. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we distributed a letter to surrounding neighbors, a few doors down in each direction, across the street and behind. And we met on Zoom and discussed the proposal. There was concern about new people coming into the neighborhood, and there was concern about snow piling, and the neighbor to the north piles snow on the subject property and would no longer be allowed to. There were concerns about overland drainage. Yeah, I think that's about it. We actually didn't get feedback on the variances that we were requesting in that consultation. Nobody expressed any concern though about the rear balconies.
All right, that's interesting. That's good. So do you know though whether or not you were talking Do you know if the residence directly to this abutting the rear yard was actually part of your consultations? Do you know that?
No, I don't know whether they were there, but I believe we had the northern and southern neighbors in attendance.
All right, and those are the ones that you indicated had already structures or vegetation that would help to reduce the impacts of privacy. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Member Coakley.
Please talk to me about parking. Convince me. I'm, you know, you heard the conversation that we had earlier. As I understand, maybe this is also a question partly directed to Ms. Linker. We're not in a streetscape analysis scenario here because, if I understand correctly, effectively the bylaw says no parking. Is that at least no on-site parking? Is that basically correct?
Thank you for the question. Parking is permitted on these lots, but front yard parking is prohibited.
Okay, so drive down the side and park in the back of in behind the house would be is that?
Yes, I believe the character of the streets from the streetscape character analysis said that they are permitted single wide driveways that can either lead to legal parking in the interior side yard, in the rear yard, or in a detached garage in the rear yard.
And you would like to have the cars parked with no garage?
That's right, in the front.
So nobody gets that extra storage space, they just have to put the car in the front of the house?
That's right. Could I have slide number 5, please? So we've designed the units with internal storage space that we feel is adequate for families. And we're proposing, given that all of the neighbors along the street have driveways and 1/3 of the neighbors have spaces that they use for front yard parking, much of which isn't probably legal, but that's the pattern that exists in the way that people park. We think that if a driveway is permitted, and we all know that people park in their driveways, then we would anticipate cars parked in driveways. Instead of paving entire driveways, we'd like to just stop the driveway at the front wall and park the cars right there. And so by zoning definition, that means those are front yard parking spaces, but ultimately from our perspective, it's just less paving. Those 6 units could thrive in that location with no parking. Sorry. It's a great neighborhood to live without a car. However, given the pattern of parking in the neighborhood, it seems totally reasonable to be putting those 2 cars there. It doesn't detract from the character of the street along there. In fact, it fits right in with the character of what exists now and provides 2 useful parking spaces.
Could I just clarify and follow up? In your document, you indicate it is not possible to acquire street permit parking in this neighborhood. You're saying that there is no permit process, or are you saying that there is no street parking allowed, or a combination of the 2?
So the permitting process right now requires the collection of signatures along the street. It's quite a long, convoluted process to and kind of introduce a permit program on your street. And that just doesn't exist on this street right now. So parking options are limited.
But street parking is permitted?
3 hours.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Other questions from our members? Okay. Let me go to our speakers list at this point. And I do have someone who's listed, Stephen Bechta. Do we have Mr. Bechta with us? Yes, terrific.
Hello. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Bechta. You've been
Thank
very
you so much. Oh, my pleasure. This is all very interesting stuff. I'm learning all kinds of things about zoning regulations today. So thank you for making this public, and thanks for making the time to allow me to speak today. So I've got a few notes here. So this proposal would replace the current 2-bedroom bungalow with 18 bedrooms over 6 units. I believe I have that right, and please feel free to correct me if I have that wrong. Using every available square foot of the lot and more through these variance applications for the expansion. During the consultation and in speaking to all of our neighbors subsequently, I live directly across the street. There was overwhelming opposition to this consultation call this summer. The design does not fit with the local streetscape character at all, most notably the front yard parking and the variance for the side yard setbacks, which are not found anywhere else on Tweedsmuir as far as I'm aware of. The parking would be the only feature that we would see in the front yard. The front yard parking would eliminate any area to blow snow onto the property during the winter. Because this is a wide street, there is an enormous, and it doesn't get plowed very often, or the snow removed very often. We have 6-foot high snowbanks on a regular basis on our front yard, for instance, and so does this property. And so there would be no place to plow the snow into while it's waited to be cleared once or twice over the winter. We're also concerned that the main tree that currently shields the house will be damaged during construction because of its proximity to the construction and to the proposed parking, which would almost abut the tree base. We're also concerned where the garbage facilities would be for these 18 new bedrooms. By allowing these multiple variances, it could add 10 or more cars to our street that is already congested with street parking, especially in the winter. And without sidewalks on this section of Tweedsmuir, these variances would make it very dangerous for the many young children and elderly that walk the street constantly, as you have to keep moving around cars parked on the street. I want to address a couple points that the petitioner had earlier, specifically about the garage for the neighbor, that it blocks the view of the neighbor's backyard, and it doesn't. If you look at the slide, the garage would block the balcony's view of the neighbor building, but not their backyard. So their privacy would be impacted dramatically. I'm not sure if these neighbors are on the call today or not, but certainly I've been in their backyard many times and would say that they would lose all their privacy. Yeah, this 7-foot high garage only would block the house from the balconies. When the petitioner was talking about that there was no opposition to the rear balconies during the consultations, because they weren't disclosed. It was never brought up during that consultation. I don't know if it was in the package and all of us missed it, but there were 25 of us on the Zoom call and it never came up because none of us that I'm aware of knew about it. And I would also disagree with the slide that was earlier highlighted in purple, that there is front yard parking regularly on Tweedsmuir. There is not. We have a driveway that leads to side yard parking, but ours, for instance, was highlighted in purple, as was our next door neighbors. But there are no cars there ever. And if you go down Tweedsmuir, it's very rare that there might be a second car parked front to back that would be considered front yard parking. That's kind of all of my points, but I feel like, these variances will allow a super intensification on a site that would stand out from the character of the neighborhood completely, and would set a very dangerous precedent, as our local councillor has personally confirmed to me. And Councillor Leeper has been following this one closely. So that's all I have, but I'm happy to take any questions if there's any clarifications that was required.
I've got just a couple. So your address again, because I just want to be able to find you on this.
Sure. 515 Tweedsmuir, so directly across the street. Our front balcony faces this lot.
And did I understand you correctly that what you consider to be dominant on Tweedsmuir in that vicinity is people who literally drive past the house and into the rear yard? Is that correct?
No, it's side yard. So basically they have to go, the driveway goes at least one car length past where a car would be. So, basically we could have a car front and back technically on our driveway, but nobody parks in that one closest to the street. I shouldn't say no one, it is very rare to see. If you look down the street, you don't see any cars because they're on the side of the house as ours are.
So beyond the front face of the wall of the house, essentially. So
E-
they drive
e-
past.
Well, on our side, it is double deep. The city of Ottawa has a right of way on Tweedsmuir. So our property line actually starts probably 30 feet back of the street. And so in order to get to where the parking is, we have to drive through the driveway, 25 feet or so.
But I think what I want to understand is so the sort of the dominant look on the street is people who have driven up that 30 feet or so beyond the front face of the house, but still next to the house.
Either next to or directly in front of the house, but not close to the road. There's at least 1 to 2 car lengths before they would park from the road, if that makes sense.
Yes, okay, I think I understand that better. Thank you. Any question? Yes, member Lucky.
So looking at what is this? The circulation map, it looks like Tweedsmuir does this funny little twist.
Yeah.
And so if the front, sorry, my question may be kind of like as someone who lives there and maybe, I don't know which one of you might answer this, but if the design was further in, is there any kind of lot obligations you have to meet because of this little curvature, or is it just over emphasized in this map and it's not actually what it's like on the ground?
It's like what it is on the ground, but I don't know what accommodations need to be made for it. Yeah, that little jog happens right at our property line, the southern property line.
So in the design, the car would be like, if this is the end of the driveway, the car would be right here?
No.
No, okay. Can
No.
you clarify?
Yeah, so the parking space is proposed to be entirely on the property with the bumper at the property line. But then there's space between the property line and the edge of the road. Okay. So on the southern property, it's a little over half a car length. On the northern property, it's sort of 3/4 of a car length. So the car would pull up and there would still be space behind the car. So it's similar to the semis that have gone in the Westboro neighborhood, where you typically see a driveway with a garage door, and there's usually a 2-car ownership pattern in those large semis. So one car pulls into the garage, the other car parks in the driveway, and there's still some space behind in the driveway.
Looks tight on this plan that I'm looking at right now. Which one, page 3 or 4 of your application? It's not clear for me on this, so it just looks very tight.
We could maybe put up a site plan again, maybe sure. Slide 4. Maybe slide 4, because it's zoomed out a little bit. There we go. Okay, so it's not a very dark line, but you can see just to the left of the words Tweedsmuir Avenue, that is the street edge. So the car is within the red area, and then there's driveway beyond that to the street.
That is more clear. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yes, member Keklikan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question of clarification for Ms. Adams. I think in your discourse, you mentioned that it would be reasonable, or you considered it reasonable to assume 2 vehicles could be provided on site. Is that tied to any particular information you have, or is it simply on the kinds of units that's being proposed? Like, why is it reasonable to provide when there's no parking required?
Oh, well, we felt that the reasonableness had to do with the context. So in a context where lots have driveways, and if we look at my slide number 5, you'll see that diagonally across the street, there's a small apartment building with front yard parking across the entire front facade. So that large block of pinky purple, as well as other locations along the street where driveways don't extend any further onto the property than just stopping at the front facade. So in that context, it seemed very appropriate to be putting those driveways to match everyone else's in the front. If this had been developed as a semi with garage doors, I don't think it would be as nice. If we could go to my slide number 2, you'll see an image of the building that we propose. There with the parking spaces in front, I think that's actually preferable to the more typical infill solution in this neighborhood, which would have garage doors in those facades. This is more in keeping with the street to have more windows and more interest, more pedestrian kind of interest on the facade.
Okay, just to follow up, I understood that maybe it was because of the kind of unit you mentioned. There were 3-bedroom units and that family and so on, and that kind of household would maybe have a need for a vehicle. So I thought that is tied to that, but I don't know if there's the city's collection of data shows that. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a good point. We do have larger units, and so there's a greater likelihood of, you know, intense interest in tenants having parking spaces.
Thank you.
Member Coakley.
Sorry, parking again. And it's just, I think this question is probably addressed to Ms. Linker. So if those windows that we just saw on that previous slide, and maybe if we could just pull it back up for the sake of the. Thank you. Thank you. So if those set of 3 windows on the ground floor were actually a garage door with a garage in behind, would that be permissible under the zoning bylaw? That the driveway leading into a garage would be permissible?
Thank you for your question. I'm just going to pull up the result of the character analysis. While I'm pulling that up, I will say, I think that this is 2 separate issues. Although this was done through a streetscape character analysis, front yard parking has been prohibited across the city since at least 1980. In the mature neighborhoods overlay, that's where you can have that exception where if it is the dominant character, it overrides the city's provision saying that it's prohibited. Sorry, 1 second.
It's actually really interesting because that means that it's actually a permissive policy rather than a restrictive policy.
I mean, I do remember we had this discussion in another context where I think the answer I got at that time was, well, yes, if there was a garage there, it would be okay, but because there isn't a garage there, it's not okay. And you know, I'll put my hand up as I have before and confess I put my car in my driveway way more often than I put it in my garage. And so, I mean, I get it might look nice if there's no car in the driveway, it's in the garage, and that has a character to it. But I suspect that is sort of ignored by 99% of car owners and garage owners, that garages become extra storage. And that, you know, was my question earlier about storage space. In my experience, most garages are glorified storage spaces. But so would garages be permitted here?
Thank you for the question. The streetscape character analysis results said no, front-facing attached garages would not be permitted here.
Okay, thank you. And if I could perhaps, I mean, to Mr. Bechter maybe, I mean, I take your point and I understand if I understood your concern correctly, about going from a single family home to 6 units and the number of people that would generate. But that is where the Ontario government is going with, you know, a single unit as of right can be converted into 4 units, if provided it meets building codes and things like that nowadays. If that is where we're heading with the. So again, I mean, I take your point, but that's where the government of Ontario has said we're going anyway. So, you know, 4 badly designed versus 6 well designed. Which would you rather, in a sense, which would you rather have?
Well, I mean, I don't think that those are the only 2 options that are here on the table. I think you could do 4 well-designed. ones. Looking at this slide, you get actually a great sense of this idea of front yard parking or not. If you look at where the cars are, both to the right and to the left of the image on the left, you will see the long driveway with the side yard parking as it exists all throughout the street. When the petitioner was talking about the 6-unit building across the street, saying that there is front yard parking, there is not. There's a front yard driveway which leads to front yard parking, but there are 3 car lengths between the street and where the cars are actually parked. They don't ever park right against the street, nor does almost anyone on that street, even though physically you could park a car there. So when you're walking up and down Tweedsmuir, you never see cars within that first car length of either side of the street, except for very rare occasions. When, let's say, you're having a Thanksgiving celebration and, all of the in-laws are over for dinner. You just don't see it. Like the image on the left shows you exactly where people park on the street, and it's not this front yard parking that is being proposed. So yeah, I just believe this minor variance doesn't really merit approval. And then the other variance about the side yard setbacks, basically they're the only egress, and there was a lot of concern around the consultation table from the neighbors about egress during a fire. So all of the backyard, all of the basement units would only be able to exit into the backyard and then along one side of the house. And what happens if there's snow piled on the other side of the house? There's no other way to get out. And again, there's no place to put snow during the winter where every other lot on this street, on both sides of the street, has an enormous amount of capacity to hold snow. So I'm not sure what would happen in this case, but usually these 2 parking spots that are proposed would be piled with 6 feet of snow throughout all of the winter. So I don't know how the city is going to plow just one section of the street to be able to offer, access to these parking spots, or where the snow will be plowed by private companies so that it doesn't live on those parking spots.
May I provide some clarifications?
Actually, I'm going to give a chance at the end. How about because this is only our first speaker. I haven't even gotten to anybody else. That's okay. I just wanted to, I know we got into a lot of discussion and we lose sight of that sometimes, but I'd rather get the issues out and then give you an opportunity to respond. So there may be nobody, but thank you, Mr. Bekta. I'm going to make the call out. Is there anyone else in the audience or online that would like to speak to this application, either for or against? All right, come on down. Good afternoon. So I'm going to ask you for your full name.
Yeah, it's Tim, Tim, Gray, Gray, 190 West Village Private. And I am a board member of the Westboro Community Association.
Thank you. All right, so the floor is yours.
Really, the neighbors and the city have done a good job to speak to, the overall concerns that we have. But the one reason that I was asked to be here is the front yard parking. And we just feel that could open a real can of worms, through the community. And that is something that we would have a very serious concern about. And I mean, it is just something that it would have to be an extraordinary circumstance for us to approve that. And I did make a site visit, and I did talk to the neighbor directly to the north. And, from what I've heard from the other neighbors, they did have a lot of concern. But one thing I do want to say is this concept of, you know, they keep talking about how they park their car further back, and that's true. If you look at the sketch that, you know, they've been bringing up, you know, I spoke to that neighbor, and his garage is, you know, what I call the old style, you know, from many years ago, where the garage was, you know, kind of accommodated in the backyard. So there is a longer laneway. And they do tend to park, you know, much closer to the home, you know, where they're, you know, like their trunk would be almost, you know, at the walkway to the home. Whereas now what we're going to be seeing is cars parked directly at the property line, the street property line. And, you know, I know that the way the neighborhood is evolving with these semi-detached and yes, people park in the driveway, but they're parked in a driveway that leads to a garage or leads to the, you know, cantilevered option. And that's legitimate as long as, well, the cantilevered option is open to anybody. But, you know, the streetscape analysis, I get it. It's a controversy, but we tend to lean more on the side of allowing that garage, because if there's a circumstance where you're supplying those, you know, family size units, and they're doing that, we understand people in those circumstances, you know, do need cars. But, and I've heard, you know, people argue about, you know, how garages are used, and I agree. If you have a big family, you got bikes, you've got garbage pails, you've got other things. So they kind of go hand in hand. But really, that's all I want to say, is that, you know, this is a very slippery slope to allow that. And, you know, we have some real concerns about it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gray. Are there questions for Mr. Gray? No? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, no, wait, I do have a question for you. Sorry. So if you're a member of the Westboro Community Association, were you consulted as part of this?
Normally they would direct it to me, but I don't think, you know, we have been. You know, we're always, you know, we'd love to talk to people, but, you know, and I did go out to, you know, visit the neighbors, and we did receive an email from the neighbors way back in April, you know, when it first kind of, you know, was on the radar. But we received that email from, you know, a neighbor, you know, asking if we had any information about it. And at that time, you know, it really hadn't hit the, you know, committee level yet. So, and Jeff doesn't get involved in this, you know, on an official basis. I can't phone his office and ask his staff to, you know, give me any insight that he has received on it. So, you know, at that time we hadn't heard. And the only thing I said to the, you know, people on the Westboro Community Association is that, you know, this is generally what is going on, these, you know, semi-detached with the front facing garage and so on and so forth. That's generally, you know, what we're seeing. And if you're seeing something, if you hear something above and beyond that, well, it's, you know, it's out of the ordinary. So that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, I'm going to make a last call out to anyone else who might have an interest in the application and would like to speak to the committee. Now's your chance. I'm not seeing anyone else. All right, so Ms. Hill, you've heard a number of concerns come up. So I'm going to give you a chance to respond. And could you include in your responses as well your consultation with the ward councillor? Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll just start with that one then. The ward councillor isn't supposed to be involved in committee of adjustment applications, so we did not consult with the ward councillor. If we had asked to, he would have declined, because that is appropriate.
Oh, all right, that's interesting. Sometimes they do. Sometimes I've seen developers go and just get sort of a first glance reaction from them to see whether or not they feel it's a good fit in their community. But I hear you though. I mean, it depends on the councillors, and things have changed over the last go around. So that's fine. Okay. With the other ones, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of opinions that seem to be grounded in information that's incorrect. It's difficult to respond to all of that and to understand where that's coming from. But let me just chronicle them a little bit. So concern that the cars will be parked right at the curb edge or the road edge, which in fact isn't the case. Concern that there is no front yard parking existing on the street, whereas diagonally across the street, there is a small apartment building with a row of 4 parking spaces across their entire frontage, with those bumpers closer to the street edge than we are proposing. Concern about snow piling, when the snow piling situation for this proposal is exactly the same as for every other semi on a 50-foot lot in this entire neighborhood. The neighborhood has not been thrown into snow crisis as a result of semis, and this snow piling situation is exactly the same. So when a concern about the tree, when in fact our design has been, our whole front layout has been organized specifically to preserve that lovely tree. And we consulted with an arborist early on to make sure that the actions that we were taking would be successful in preserving that tree. So when I look at all of those concerns together, I think that perhaps there's something else underlying the pushback against this development. And I know that one of the neighbors outside of the consultation session let me know that 6 units weren't welcome in the neighborhood, and that those 6 households would be treated poorly by their neighbors. So I think one thing needs to be clear here. The 6 units are permitted, and we're not asking for variances for the 6 units. Not only are they permitted, but the provincial and federal governments are tripping over themselves to try and find ways to move developments like this ahead. And we're providing 6 homes for 6 families of different sizes. This is important work, and it's going ahead. We would like to make it even better by providing these 6 households, but 2 of these 6 households with an on-site parking space. So I'm asking you to decide today about those 2 on-site parking spaces. There's a few other miscellaneous smaller variances that are kind of technicalities. None of them actually with respect to side yard, which was also raised as a concern. We're not varying the side yard. Really, this is just a question of whether the proposal is better with 2 parking spaces or without 2 parking spaces. In other respects, it is compliant. So really, it comes down to that one question. I know that the neighbors are very wound up about the idea of intensification on their street. That's simply not part of this variance request. It's not a question for you guys to consider today about whether intensification is appropriate here or not. The question is simply front parking or not. Does it make it better? It simply is present immediately in the neighborhood. There certainly are cars parked in that kind of proximity to the road. It's functionally successful. It maintains the tree, and I propose it improves the development.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hill. Just rest assured, the committee is aware of the intensification policies and the reform, the planning reform that's happened. We've had many applications before us, so we do understand that it's not about the units, it's not part of the minor variance, so we do know that. Just I just want you to be, have some comfort with that.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, then, any just last questions before I think we're going to reserve on this application, just based on the import that we've had and some of the discussion. So with that, then, I'm going to give you, is there anything you would like to add at this point, Ms. Hill?
Well, I'd like to point out that the building is the same size as a semi, so it fits into visually in the context of the street as would a lower density development, and that I think it's going to look great there.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, so you will get the decision in due course, but thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so with that brings us to the end of our agenda, unless I missed something. Are we all good to adjourn? Okay, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.